looking at the June report, we're still seeing some growth, but are we seeing some factors that are slowing it down?
It is, Cindy, our survey of supply managers in 9 states. That's 9 states stretching from North Dakota and Minnesota in the north to Oklahoma and Arkansas in the south. The index dropped for the second time in a row, the second monthly decline we've recorded, and that's May and June. So I'm thinking this economy is slowing down, it's weakening, but it's nothing like what we're seeing in the national economy, nothing like what we're seeing in the global economy. But the question is, can this region continue to grow while the rest of the nation is still growing, but the growth is really coming down much more quickly and dramatically there than in our survey states. So all in all, it was a good report for the month, but it's certainly not as good as what we saw earlier in the year. The second half of 2012, I'm expecting weaker employment growth, weaker economic growth in comparison to the first half of 2012.
What I found interesting was the wholesale prices. I mean, that's really declined.
Oh, that's remarkable. The decline in our inflation gauge moved down to its lowest level since the recession. So the deflationary or disinflation trends, it's not deflation, it's disinflation, which means the inflation rate is coming down. It's coming down sharply. I think it's going to go below 50 next month, and that would be the July report. This is just indicating that this global economy is slowing down and it's being telegraphed back to this part of the country, and that's coming back via energy prices. Of course, oil prices coming down, agricultural commodity prices are coming down, and that's going to show up in our survey in the second half of 2012. Again, I'm expecting slower growth, lower inflationary pressures for the second half of 2012 compared to the first half of 2012.
Are you expecting the Fed to kind of change what they've been doing?
The Fed, they're sort of out of bullets. So you remember the old movies when the cowboy would shoot 5 of his shots and then he'd shoot his 6th. And I'm like, shouldn't have done that. Should have kept one back. Well, that's what we're talking about with the Federal Reserve. They've shot all the bullets in their economic holster. There's nothing, very little left. Now, they don't really want to tell us that. That's not something that makes you feel comfortable. So what they've got left to do, the only thing I think they could do is what would be called QE3. I think we will see QE3 sometime in the second half of 2012. It may be past elections because Bernanke doesn't want to get caught up in this election. If he announced a QE3 in August, that would be in part of the elections. And of course, QE3 means they're buying long-term treasuries, bringing the yields down. But who on earth thinks this economy is not growing because of interest rates are too high? They're at record low levels. What else can the Fed do? Very little.
I found it interesting, though, that confidence remains above 50, and it's actually went up.
I'm asking the supply managers, what economy are you looking at? And the economy they're looking at is their one they're in, which is not doing that poorly. It's in fact continuing to grow, but again, we're in one of the healthiest parts of the country in terms of job growth. These states that we survey have about 10% of the jobs, but we got 15% of the job gains. That's what we're talking about. This month we asked them for the month of June, are we going to see a recession in 2013? 8% thought yes. 8%. You ask that question at the national level, you're going to get 20 to 30 to 40% think we're going to have a recession in 2013. So all in all, it was a good report. But again, can this economy continue to grow at the pace we're seeing with everything else? I won't say collapsing, but it's looking weaker out there. And that would be, of course, Europe, Asia, and the U.S. for sure.
What else about the survey that you found interesting?
We asked, what's the biggest obstacle, biggest negative factor facing your firm? 25% said healthcare reform. And that's, of course, very high. In other words, we gave them a laundry list of things to name. 25% said healthcare reform. That's not good. Of course, we've got the fiscal cliff. I hate using that. It has become trite. But again, trite and true. it is a physical cliff on January the 1st of 2013. We are going to see record tax increases for everybody out there. We're going to see cuts in spending, although I'm not so sure on that one. Those may be put off. There will be a tax increase January 1st. The question is, does the new Congress, does the new administration, or the old administration, whichever we get, what do they do? And that's a real big key. But we're staring down, staring down slower economy, slower economic growth, and we've got low inflation, at least in the pipeline, at least in this intermediate pipeline. But the Fed is left with nothing to do, except for printing money and throwing it out of a helicopter, and of course that's not going to happen. Well, as you said, Cindy, everything I shouldn't say everything, but things look pretty good. One thing that was very troubling, and perhaps the most troubling part, new export orders dropped below growth neutral. That's negative. Okay, so that again, that drop below growth neutral, very negative. And of course, this part of the country has been growing because of exports. So that's again reflective of what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Asia, what's going on in South America to some extent. Putting that all together, there's no way on earth we can be, in my view, expecting higher growth in the second half in comparison to the first half. It's going to be lower growth. In the first half, if we look at GDP growth for the nation, is 2%. So we're looking at 1 to 1.5, and maybe even below 1. Certainly, there is the potential for recession in 2013, but can't call it right now from our survey. You can't call it from national surveys at this point in time. But let's wait and see what next month brings. We've come out with our July report on August the 1st, so that's going to be a very important report for me, but also for Mr. Romney and Mr. Obama. They're going to be watching it more closely than me.